Some Pacific and Māori school leavers are concerned they're being failed by a lack of civic education in New Zealand. There's a number of students and youth workers who feel ill-equipped ahead of the election. Many are first-time voters. RNZ Pacific put the question to the New Zealand Electoral Commission, who said the responsibility lies with schools and the Ministry of Education. Alicia Foon has more.
There are over 80,000 Pacific students with the New Zealand school system. However, that number may vary, with dozens of Pacifica students having to leave school prematurely to enter the workforce to financially support their families due to COVID-19 impacts and pressures under the rising cost of living. Dunedin youth worker at Te Hauora Whānau Services, Sid Ford, believes 18 to 24-year-olds are the most underserved and neglected age group within Aotearoa. She says they deserve more support before entering the workforce and voting for the first time.
I think we'd have to address the education around civics and the lack thereof education around civics in the schooling system. I don't think there's any one particular course in schools. I certainly can't remember it from my time at school. So I think it would start with using spaces like Generation Vote, who are non-for-profits. It's set up by students most often, who are keen to get in there and educate schools, educate teachers on that space, but it also takes the weight off teachers because they do enough.
RNZ Pacific put the question to New Zealand's governing body in charge of setting up the nation's elections. Civic education is not the Electoral Commission's responsibility, that's what you're saying?
Yes.
Who is responsible then? Who does that responsibility fall on?
It would sit with the schools, the educators, the boards and the Ministry of Education, because they design the curriculum. We provide information during the general election to create awareness of the election.
Anusha Gula, Deputy Chief Executive of the New Zealand Electoral Commission, says it's ultimately up to schools to develop their own local curriculum. She says what they do provide are resources in a range of Pacific languages to help equip community leaders and teachers. An example of this was providing schools with tools to run a mock election where students get to vote for their preferred party and candidate.
That would see about 115,000 school students participating and kids voting, and it's a great way for students of all ages and ethnicities to learn about our electoral system.
Despite the promising initiative, only 30% of schools across New Zealand have signed up this year to take part. The Ministry of Education gave a response through a statement saying it's up to individual schools to decide how civics education is covered and that resources are readily available. Due to New Zealand's current setup of its national curriculum, the Ministry says the responsibility of civic education ultimately falls back on schools. It means teachers are expected to educate future generations about the voting and political system on top of dozens of other school subjects. Ford said it shouldn't be on teachers to do this, and that youth advisors and educators who specialise in civics should be employed to teach in schools in the lead up to elections.
Our rangatahi are the ones that are going to be facing the problems of today that we're discussing right now in politics and trying to set the rhetoric for moving forward. And how are we meant to set the rhetoric moving forward if we don't include everyone who it affects? Kids who have fallen out of the education system or have been let down by it more particularly are the least involved in that space and have least access to getting knowledge about that.
She says it's vital to have more targeted and compulsory civics education in schools, considering the voting age may be lowered from 18 to 16 years old.
A lot of the mahi I do is teaching them the basics of tax, like the PAYE system. They don't understand how that works. They don't understand why they pay tax. They don't know what ACC levies are. But this is the sort of thing. You've got 16-year-olds that I'm working with who aren't entitled the right to vote, but have to learn how to work within their systems and are taxed like they're given the right to vote, but they're not. So I think maybe looking at that problem, make it 16, would be a good start as well. That's where we'd get a lot more influence and buy-in from our young people in terms of the voting space. Right up until 18, they have to ask to go to the toilet, but at 16, they can get taxed and pay ACC levies, so I don't know. Seems a bit confusing at times for them as to where they get to sit, hey?
The New Zealand election is now less than a month away, and people are being encouraged to make sure they're enrolled to vote on October 14.